Welcome to A Heart-Led Humanity. My name is Carolina Grace, and this is a sacred space where I will be hosting conversations with exceptional front-running heart-led pioneers, demonstrating what else is possible for the future of humanity across all areas of society when we firstly live through the filter of our hearts before integrating with our minds and our heads in order to create a more compassionate, respectful society for humanity's future. So these conversations are designed to provoke reflection about what do we really want for the future of our race and the planet we live on. What difference would it make if we each lived our lives consciously through the lens of our hearts, first and foremost? What would that look like for you? So today's pioneering guest is activist, author, and heart-mind integrated leading edge creator, Kingsley L Dennis, who for me perfectly epitomizes what occurs when the intellect meets the heart. Or maybe that should be when the heart meets the intellect. I'll leave that for you to decide. His deep evocative writing, though, sourced from his own compassionate nature and desire to see a much better future for humanity, have inspired me. So for those of you who've yet to meet Kingsley, I feel sure our conversation today will provoke feeling and thought in equal measure, as he brings his heart perspective to our current head-led paradigm and the greater spiritual context in which all of this is unfolding. So welcome, Kingsley. So for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Kingsley, Kingsley is an author, an activist, and what I would call a heart-mind integrated leading edge creator. Somebody who for me epitomizes what happens when the intellect meets the heart. So I know that he is creating a lot of work at the moment that is around looking to what is unfolding in the world and how to create a more compassionate future for humanity. So he appeared to me the perfect guest to inaugurate these heart-led humanity conversations. So I would really like to welcome you, Kingsley, to our conversation today.
Well, thank you, Caroline. It's a pleasure. And thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yes, well, I'm sure it underplays it significantly, given all the amount of work that you've done in the past. And you have produced the most amazingly creative videos as well. So we did have a preliminary chat and we decided that sovereignty would be something that we would discuss today, because the more I explore sovereignty, the more I realize how pivotal it is to what is the future of humanity from my perspective. But I did wonder whether you might like to just make a few comments about what you see unfolding at the moment for the future of humanity. So just in terms of, yeah, don't like asking small ones. Where do you, maybe just a quick overview, just to provide a little bit of context for what you see is unfolding at the moment. I know that you're amazingly succinct, so I'm sure this will be no challenge at all.
Well, I would try to be succinct. I mean, well, I think it's quite obvious to any observant person that we're going through some incredible moments right now. And it seems as if I was commenting the other day to somebody, and we were saying we've come to a point where we could be, for example, standing next to somebody physically a few inches away, and yet we're in a totally different reality. It's come to the point where there seems to be almost a kind of split in reality. And, that's a large thing to say, and I'll try to kind of come around to that. But you see, for so long, we've all been existing on this wonderful planet, on this earth, through a kind of consensus reality. And this consensus reality has been maintained for such a long time. We have our mythologies, our stories, our narratives. I mean, the human race is really a kind of storytelling race. That's how we get to believe what we do. Mm-hmm. But I think what's happened in the last few years, especially, is this kind of, I would call it the meltdown in a consensus reality. And I think people are now finding that they need to reposition themselves. And that's part of, I think, the dissonance is what's going on in the world right now, is that there's a lot of physical breakdown because we've come to a point in human history whereby a lot of incumbent systems are no longer working. We have to shift to new systems externally, and that's reflected internally. And so now I think there's a repositioning or a recalibration to find people to find their resonance of where they want to place themselves. And that's creating some kind of discomfort between people as well, because we may find that our best friends, our family are not on the same wavelength, in the same position. So there's kind of shuffling. It's like a train gets to a station and they say, all change. And then people are finding their carriages.
Yeah.
So this is going on a lot, and that's, in a positive sense, it allows us to kind of re-engage with where we need to be for the future. But in the short term, it's creating a bit of discomfort. For example, you're sitting down.
Slight understatement, Kingsley.
Yeah. It's like you watched a 3-hour film and you got up and oh, my back's aching because I've been sitting in the same position for so long. Humanity has been sitting watching the same film for millennia, and it's just getting up now and it's got a bit of a backache.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect description of what's absolutely unfolding. And I think also that people don't realize, I mean, the mental health issues that are occurring at the moment, we're looking at from that energetic, even spiritual perspective. It's the dissonance in the energies that people are encountering in what they're being asked to do against their own inner internal guidance system, where there is a resistance and a friction, and there's them feeling that they're being sold a story, but that they need to follow, they're compelled almost to follow, yet it's still causing that physical reaction to it, and they don't know what to do with that. And so that's coming out in all these emotional and psychological, creating dissonance between people and also in their own mental health. So, yeah.
Well, I would just respond to that and say I completely agree with you, and it's so pronounced now. And I think this is why it ties in so well with the theme of the concept of sovereignty. Is because
words out my mouth.
For so long,
yes,
for so long we've had this kind of notion of sovereignty or the self covered over. Like, the Russian dolls you can get, the Matryoshka dolls, you get a small one, a bigger one, a bigger one. We've been the small little doll inside for so long, and we've had these layerings of conditioning and programming and narratives. And now, like, those Russian dolls are coming off.
Yeah.
And that's creating also some of this mental, emotional imbalance, because we're kind of being impacted by things that have been suppressed for so long.
Yes, and people don't have an additional context beyond that which they are told to put all this in. So that's causing the extra angst and aggravation, because they're trying to put it within the physical framework as well. And for those of us who understand that the world is much broader and goes into quantum, we know that the world is energetic, and so those energies are creating those trauma waves, those waves of trauma within the physical body that they don't know what to do with as well. So anyway, I'm repeating myself, but going back to that topic of sovereignty, we had a fantastic discussion about this previously, and the more I go into it, the more I can see it as the missing code of conduct almost that humanity is seeking without knowing it to grow into, as a kind of a framework for what do we really want a compassionate society and a responsible society to look like. So yes, I'd love to hear. Go for it, Kingsley. I know that you have huge amounts to contribute on this.
Well, I'll try and be succinct. And you're right, we had a good conversation prior to this. Like all good conversations, they happen spontaneously off the record. But we were, like all things, we have restraints of vocabulary and language. And also we have, a certain baggage through language. And I think sovereignty has been underrepresented underrepresented as an understanding for so long. And it's usually considered externally. And when we say I'm a sovereign individual, people, or we may tend to think, or previously we thought, you know, I kind of have my rights. I have my human rights, my individual rights. And it's been used in terms of like, we are citizens, we are part of, you know, I may try to create my own republic. You know, I have this sovereign kind of environment, which is external. But I think what we need to kind of shift to now and try to engage with is that sovereign really has to start internally with the core self. Because for so long, through all these stories and narratives, humanity's been giving itself away. It's as if we've given ourselves away, and then the external societies sell ourselves back to us again.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
We buy parts of ourselves back again, and that's the kind of exchange that's been going on for centuries. We give ourselves away and we buy ourselves back, and that's the exchange whereby the sovereign self is undivisive, unsellable, and can never be given away. That's the first thing I would say.
Yes, I think it's really important that I think it's really important to define what sovereignty is, as you're exploring here, because it's used in such common language. You know, I'm a sovereign being. Natural law says I'm entitled to do this. You know, the free man, the common law says that we're entitled to do this. So there's a sense of entitlement in some ways that it's used. This is mine. I'm going to claim my right, my legal right to do this, which may go contrary to our existing legal system. And the more I've looked into what is sovereignty, to be sovereign is basically an honor code. It's a route to self-mastery through understanding who I am and having a responsibility towards evolving myself to benefit not just society and those I work with, but my own personal evolution. So it's kind of a code, almost like you might associate with the Knights Templar, going back centuries, that they had this code that they lived life by. I'm not necessarily saying that we want to replicate their failed code. However, it's about having a positive outlook on life and expecting the best and doing your best by others to not only educate and master your own emotions, your behaviors in a way that is beneficial to the whole of society, but also to be responsible for fostering that in others. So everybody has access to an inner sense of what it is to be good in many ways. And we model spirituals, our spiritual models, you know, Christ, Buddha, they are very much modeled on this ideal human kind of model. And for me, that is what sovereignty is all about, finding our way to be the best that we can be in honoring ourselves, others, and the situation. So
yeah. Wonderful way of expressing it. I'd like to add on that. I mean, you mentioned Knights Templar, which is a kind of way of chivalry. Yes. So I think the chivalry is the expression. And then you mentioned the people like Buddha and Christ, which were the kind of essence and core. So I think we have to kind of understand how the core essential inner self and the expression of it come together.
Yes.
Now,
heart,
you
mind.
mentioned about people. Sorry.
Heart, mind.
Yeah, it is. It's everything's integrated. Nothing is separate. So you don't have one without the other.
Yes.
You know, and that's, again, language tends to, you know, divide things. Humanity loves to categorize things. That's what we do best. For me, a kind of sovereign understanding is that, I mean, you mentioned, you know, we feel entitled. Well, entitlement should not be an external thing. We have a legacy because we are a part of creation, a part of source, a part of unity. We are inherently a part of unity. And that's responsibility. It's not a privilege, it's responsibility to represent that in the correct way. How to manifest that, how to express it. And I would say, for one, just one way of understanding or framing sovereignty is an acknowledgement that we are a part of the unified source of everything. And therefore, to express that, we express it through service.
Yeah.
But we don't know, it's hard to understand how to serve if we don't understand ourselves, because otherwise we're projecting a wrong impression on people.
So this takes us back to the externals, the focus. I mean, for millennia, we've lived from the left brain, which is the masculine and which has evolved or descended into patriarchy. And as a consequence, for me, our spiritual evolution has been subverted by embedding us and entraining us to live within that left side of our brain, because that means we are, as you've been speaking, constantly focused on how we control our external reality, to the extent that we completely eliminate and forget that we have an internal reality sourced often through our more right brain, which is more creative and intuitive and connected with our heart and our spiritual connection. And so we have been taught purposely to focus and to give our power away by focusing externally, and control over, power over. And so it's only, and whilst religion has taken its place, that too has been subverted in the way it's been used to control people. And I think this is why, and this is what's led me to host these conversations right now, is that we stand, for me, at a pivotal choice point for humanity. Which way are we going to go? Following that head-led, ego-driven, man-made solution for humanity, which is technologically driven, will be technocratically led, but AI controlled in the future, that takes us down our enhancements and hybridization towards transhumanism, or the natural organic ascension path sourced through our hearts and our compassionate natures and our connection to the divine. And so to do that, though, that requires the integration of the inner and the outer, to understand our inner power, how that expresses in the outer world, how we integrate that, which is why, whilst I would like these conversations to reflect how it is that we bring our heart to the fore, we've completely suppressed our heart before and led from the head. Now it's about, yes, we need the integration, but we still need the heart to lead. And the sovereignty for me is about finding our way through that integration, led through the heart, integrated with the head or the mind, but expressed in balanced, embodied, so that we can be in service to the outer world whilst being in service to ourselves through our own self-understanding, which is pivotal and fundamental to us being able to do that.
Exactly. And, you know, it just shows how often we mess things up. We get in our own way too often, you know. Yeah. It's like we stumble over our own, because we're trying to impose things. That's what the head does, the intellect. It tries to impose, whereas the heart allows.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about forgiveness, we don't talk about forgiveness through the head.
Yeah.
My mind forgives you. You say, my heart forgives you. Because the mind path imposes, the heart path allows. And we, you know, humanity has been imposing and forcing its way for so long, we've forgotten largely how to stand back. So if we allow, let's say, we call it source, or the vital energy of creativity, which is source, if we allow that to flow through us and we express it and manifest it without trying to get in its way and redirect it, then things will happen in a much more organic way.
Yes.
Because there is a natural resonance,
yes.
a natural harmony, a natural order. But humanity has tried to intervene and you know, and to force its way into modeling this or modeling that.
Yeah.
And therefore we've messed up the resonance lines or the wavelength.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great description again. And it's the balance, though, isn't it? I mean, we've all been brought up from childhood to live in our left brain and to look at the external world first and foremost. And logic rules, you know, you can't have any feelings until you've fulfilled the need to be practical and logical and rational. And only then, you know, have we got time to be creative and inspired and explore our feelings. And now, of course, technology's come along and embedded us in our left brain, because it requires our attention 24/7. So for me, and so we've got no time to go into our heart or our right brain and connect with our intuitive nature through reflection and downtime. So for me, it's all about that balance. And I love the infinity symbol as the expression of the flow between the two, the outer and the inner, the right, the left, the heart, the head. I always love that as a reminder of being in the flow. And we know when we're in the flow, don't we? We know when we're doing both. And I think
when we're not thinking too much.
Yes.
You know, when you learn how to ride a bicycle, you're not thinking too much, you just do it. You know, if you thought about, I'm moving my left foot on the pedal, then my right foot, you'll just, you know, you just crash into the curb and fall over. Because when you're in that flow, it becomes kind of your whole body senses it. It knows how to operate. It's when, you know, like I said, when we get in our own way and start to overthink it, then that whole harmony breaks down.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that we're never apart from this wholeness, from this flow. We're always a part of it. It's just that, as you mentioned, especially through schooling, you know, the weapons of mass distraction, schooling just takes our mind off the essential and puts it onto the external, the you know, the superficial.
Yes.
And so everything then accumulates from that educational programming until we get to the stage where, you know, if we really want to come back to ourselves, we've got to start taking everything off.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
We're walking around with like 100 overcoats on. You know, every new
you've got some fantastic analogies, Kingsley. You've got some fantastic analogies. And isn't it, I always find it interesting how we've all got so comfortable with putting our focus on the outside world and living in this structured environment that we know how everything works, because it's that belonging sense, isn't it? We can feel that we know, it's the knowing. It's the knowing about how things work, and if you do this, then that happens. And by stepping more into the heart and stepping more into that flow, it's being in the present and not knowing and being comfortable. Yes,
it's a leap of trust, and it's very difficult because, you know, we've been entrained or conditioned to have this security, to feel we need security.
Yeah,
and you know. Especially as you know, as you understand, the human species, when we have children, they are perhaps out of all the animal kingdom the longest needing dependency upon the family. Animals, after a few days, they run around, they start to learn because they pick up the environment. Humans need a longer dependency time, and that kind of gets us a kind of condition to kind of put a lot of our responsibility externally onto dependency.
Yes.
And then that gets taken by society and the systems and placed on different institutions. And then we come to a point, after all this so long of being comfortable putting our reliability onto outside institutions, we lose that kind of trust in ourselves. To actually go into the flow, it's like jumping into the stream, you know? You don't know where the stream is going to take you. It's a leap of faith. And for, you know, and I understand it's quite, you know, anxious at first, but it's that trusting in oneself, or we can say the trust in one's sovereignty, that we jump in the stream, but we'll always go where our self needs to take us.
Yes, our higher self. Yes, absolutely. And the challenge, I think, with sovereignty at the moment is the focus, from my perspective, and the way I see it being used at the moment, is very much still on that I need to control my outer environment by claiming my rights to do this or to do that. And it's less from the way I've seen it expressed about how do I embody the qualities of the masculine and the feminine and the responsibility towards myself and others without blame, and looking to educate or support. It seems much more singular in terms of, again, to me, the way I see it expressed is about the rights. And and the polarity, you know, I don't like the rights that I'm being given. I don't agree with the system that it's come from. So I'm going to claim my own and justify it under natural law or whatever, which may well be fully justifiable and defensible. But it's still, for me, about the tangible claiming of things without the balance of who do I need to be in order to be worthy of claiming this and expressing this in the world. So I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I know where I'm coming from.
I mean, you've very well expressed this external game. Yeah. When you start going out there and saying, I'm going to claim this, I have these rights, what we may not realize we're doing is actually we're playing this game.
Yes, yes.
This external game, yes. This kind of illusory reality, yes, that humanity has created over millennia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the polarity, we have these things, and at first we may feel that this is working, I'm getting my rights back. Now, human rights, of course, are very important in our external world. But we have to be careful that we don't get entangled into this game of definitions of playing roles. Because for me, the understanding of the sovereign, our sovereign self, is a human question. Mm-hmm. It's a question of our humanity and of coming back to being a human. Not getting pulled out and drawn out into these external kind of game plays and the rules that certain institutions make up. Because then we start running around and chasing our own tails. The sovereign self is a human condition, the human self. It's like bringing yourself back home. How to regather yourself and re-understand that connection between your essential self and, let's say, source connection, and how to express that.
Yes, and I also think it's about the embodiment in terms of role modeling. So if we're going to create a new, more organic future for humanity, to have this sovereign aspiration in terms of who we are, the self-mastery, you know, the fairness, the honor, the justice, the positive presumption that everybody's innocent until they're guilty, giving people the benefit of the doubt, looking to support other people regardless of their past, not holding, you know, grudges, etc. If we, and again, that for me, in many ways, is epitomized in a lot of these religious icons that or figures that we do know so well. I think in many ways, if we could have 1% or 10% of the population becoming a fully embodied sovereign being, where their self-interest, they are integrated fully within themselves and honor themselves, but they're able to express that fully in the world. Imagine if we had a lot of those people walking around in society today, how the children would benefit from having people to look up to as opposed to our usual role models, be they, you know, in the more celebrity-oriented sphere of life. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but for somebody to forward what good would look like in humanity, or what we might aspire to as a race, I think this would be phenomenal. So it's as I say, the more I investigate what it is to be a sovereign versus claiming one's sovereignty in many ways, it really seems to epitomize what is possible for the future of humanity.
Exactly. And interestingly, some of the words you've used there, you've used about embodiment, organic. Those words express the organic body, the human, not the technological, not the digital, but when you've been expressing the sovereign human being, you're talking about, you know, the person that is wholeness, an organic person, not getting lost
flesh
in
and blood.
flesh and blood. and spirit, especially the
DNA.
spirit. And
Yeah.
also my sense and my feeling is that the sovereign self is completely outside any type of hierarchy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
again, the game that's being played is that they've been pushing the status to hierarchy. You mentioned the celebrities. If we see a person, let's say, if we see a professor, we automatically think that they're educated and they know better. Or if we see a doctor, we think that, you know, they know better because of their status. But you see, these are roles whereby the sovereign self has no role. It has an essence.
Yes.
And we may find that in anybody, any walk of life, whether, you know, whatever their social status or whatever they're doing, you can express this. And you're so right about what you said about it, only a few people influencing so many others. Because there are many, what I would call sovereign individuals in the world, but many of them are perhaps not recognized or they're not visible socially.
Yeah.
They just go on and do their thing.
Yeah.
And they just carry on in their everyday life, but they impact people. People feel good around them. People
Yes.
feel inspired, or, you know, we say, oh, I got a good vibe from that person. I feel
Yes.
energized.
Yes. Yes.
So we don't know where these sovereign individuals are. Some of them are perhaps unconscious of it, but they just express it naturally.
So they're
And
human
other people,
beings versus the
yeah,
human
human beings,
doings.
but they're
Yes.
closer to something human.
Yeah.
And so I do feel it's about coming back to this human essence and then letting that be the resonance that we send out in what we do, whether it's through our mastery or whether it's through interactions with other people. We allow that to come through in a natural sense without any roles or status, because
Yes.
that is the powerful energy.
So what is your perspective then on our potential, therefore, to optimize the human body with technology? I won't throw you directly into Elon Musk's Neuralink, but
well,
but just generally. Because it's being sold to us as kind of humanity's salvation. You know, our biology is failing us. We're not sufficiently, you know, it's not good enough. Now we have technology and we have the knowledge, you know, we should be using it for humanity's benefit. Yes.
This is the pivotal question. And we've been thrown the narrative of what I call the weak body.
Yeah.
Oh, like, you know, especially in the last 2 years, the body's weak and we have all these diseases. We have to upgrade the body, just like we upgrade a computer with their, you know, the virus software, we upgrade it. That's the narrative that it, you know, it's very, very cunning, very cunningly done right now.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we do have to really look at this and understand that this is a pivotal moment for humanity, because we don't need to throw technology away.
No.
We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, because technology can work in harmony with human development.
Yeah.
But the question is, if humanity or if human beings who are developing technology are not coming from a place of balance or unification, whatever they create will reflect that. And we can see that right now, that technology is reflecting a polarization, a kind of taking over, a colonization of the human ability. And if we give ourselves away to technology, then we will give away our purpose and meaning. Yeah. And they're selling us a terrible storyline. They're saying, in the future, you know, you don't have to work. You know, we'll give you whatever universal basic income. You have more leisure time. But what they're doing is they're taking away purpose and meaning.
Yes.
And once they take that away, then the human essence can really start to retract from engagement with life.
Yes.
And also we have less ability because our abilities are being taken from us. How many people now can read a paper map when navigating?
Yes. Yes.
How many people can remember more than 2 phone numbers? Because now it's all
restored in your phone. Yeah. Yes.
It's slowly been taken away from us. So there's 2 types of technology. There's what Rudolf Steiner, for example, referred to as moral technology. There's a moral technology that works with humanity to enhance humanity.
Yes.
But then there's this almost inhuman technology, which is it works almost against us. There's nothing There's nothing conscious about it. There's nothing intelligent about it. You see how they try to slip in those words, artificial intelligence. It's artificial intellect or cleverness, but not intelligence, because intelligence also comes from the heart.
Yes, yes. And it's the
Cleverness
heart.
doesn't.
It's the heart that's formed before the brain in the body. And we know from heart math how important the heart is. But for me, you are a master of words. So I always find it quite difficult to follow on. But in my simplistic manner, I see that technology is being put ahead of humanity. So we are inverting the priorities of who's in control and what has priority. So we are even giving AI, we are training AI to develop AI. So, you know, there are there are factories or labs of AI that are teaching AI to outperform AI that humans have no oversight over. They have no control over what those AI are teaching the other AI. And we think this is fabulous. And then there's also the day-to-day inculcation of humans being entrained into the device, because now we have apps. I'm very resistant to having apps. So before we had laptops and your phone, you know, you might use for a few other alternatives, text or whatever, but now people are using their phones as their all-encompassing device attached to their hand, very close to the chip in the hand that, you know, gives you the virtual reality screens that are there already. So we are becoming so indoctrinated and entrained into using technology that we're putting it ahead of our own physical and biological needs and emotional needs. And therefore, humanity is being overtaken without humanity realizing it. It's such a drip, drip, drip over, you know, years, decades, and a century of gradual indoctrination, so that people don't realize what they've given up and what it was to be without a constant distraction 24/7. I mean, I know that I get people so frustrated with me because they can't reach me all the time because I don't carry my phone around with me. Goodness me, I go for a dog walk without a phone. Isn't that unusual?
Yeah, and people are worried if you don't respond to an email within 24 hours.
Yeah.
You see, this drip, drip, drip is very quickly becoming a flood.
Yes.
And you know, this is, to my understanding, part of this inversion. Everything is getting inverted.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the Silicon Valley and these tech people, they're like very, very cunning door-to-door salespeople. You know, they know how to give the pitch. They call this, for example, you mentioned about artificial intelligence teaching itself. They call it deep learning. At schools, we only had learning. We didn't have deep learning, but now the machines have deep learning. So they get the, you know, they have the upper hand.
The extra layer.
The extra, you know, the extra mile. But it's true, they use this language to try to smooth it over, the icing on the cakes, everything's fine.
Smart.
When you look at it, it's taking us further and further away from ourselves. So, you know, the self is embodied, it's physical. Okay, we have the energies of the human body and the heart, but it has a bodily expression. Then we go to digital infrastructure, which has some physical infrastructure and some digital. It's a mix. And now they're talking about the metaverse. I mean, that is worrying when they start talking about the metaverse, you know, the next big thing that all these big tech companies are funding. But you see how it's taking us further and further away into the ethers.
Absolutely. And the reason that they need the metaverse is that when they've destroyed the economies, nobody has any jobs and nobody has that meaning, and everybody's on UBI locked away at home behind a screen, because we'll be gradually entrained to fear one another. So we're all at home isolated behind a screen. Not only are we easy to control, but we lose contact with reality. And I've just lost my train of thought there about what it was I was going to say. But so the metaverse, yes, we'll need the metaverse to remember what it was like to connect and be with one another. And so that will be people's distraction from the fact they've got no reality, they've got no life, they've got meaning, no purpose in the physical to go out and interact with. So it's you can see how all the dots connect.
And the principal question is, if you're living through your avatar in the metaverse,
why do you need your body?
Yeah, is the avatar sovereign? Can the avatar be a sovereign self? Well, no. So they've got you, because they've got you projecting through an avatar or whatever that has no soul, cannot be sovereign, and yet you're interacting with now the new reality through that. So we've gone a further remove from ourselves. First, now we're kind of projecting into the external world. That's one remove from the sovereign self. But once you start projecting into the metaverse or the digital zone, then it's a further remove. And so, you know, this game is taking us further away from ourselves. So for me, to be sovereign is to bring it back home.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that's a fantastic definition. And also there's the element of being spiritually sovereign, which is connected to your higher self, not just your physical embodiment, in terms of being self-determining. And we do that through our DNA. And what are we told? How much of it is junk? 99% or thereabouts. And it's useless. Hey, we don't need that stuff. So we'll just mess around with it and we'll upgrade it and play with it and do a few things. But don't you worry about that, because, you know, we're in control and you don't need to worry. Trust us.
Trust us. It's like the same play as, you know, using vocabulary to take away of hiding what's really there. So if it's junk, everyone forgets it. They just, you know, oh, it's junk. So the mind just has, you know, receives this word, processes it, and then just locks it away. It doesn't even get anywhere. It doesn't even get to the heart kind of processing. So yes, it's, you know, this is going on, it's a big topic, yes. But it's a pivotal time right now. It's essential because, again, you know, these are monumental times, because we are now one or two generations, which are the only generations that are going to witness and experience the shifting over between ages. Because when we were talking about before, when we were younger, there was no digital age. It was all analog. It was all physical. Even, you know, we remember our parents having the first television or the first phone. Now we are witnessing the arrival of the digital world. But the generations being born now will be the first generation to be born into a digital world. So for them, it's completely normal. Imagine one generation further, when the metaverse has already arrived, they'll be arriving into a fully digitized world. And so they won't have the same references that we're trying to explain now. And so this is why it's so important to try to navigate this era, because we are moving over to a historical epoch, into a totally new era.
And I think that's also why it's pivotal for us to connect with our inner selves, so that we have a reference point to relate to and to express in the world. And at the moment, we're just being given the one option. I mean, not that it hasn't always been that way, but we're being increasingly directed down that route to disconnect from our body and from our spiritual self, because once we live completely in our head, we are disconnected from our ability to feel, to have feel our emotions, to determine what our emotions are, self-reflect, to know what it means to be angry or frustrated or sad, what's created it, because we're constantly focusing at, we don't have that time to self-reflect and determine that. And also our intuition comes through our heart connection or our gut, whereby we can navigate what is truth and what isn't when it's served to us. And at the moment, if you haven't got that additional gatekeeper, if you like, it's even more difficult with everything that's being given to us at the moment, with the dissonance between what we feel and what we know to be true. And can we discern? Do we have the capabilities still to discern? We know something isn't quite right, but we might just keep going along because the herd's doing things. So we,
Yeah.
you know, we're increasingly, as you say, incrementally losing touch with that. And that for me, again, is one of the reasons that I think this conversations are so key for us to actually talk about. What do we really want for the future of humanity? What do we want it to look and feel like on a daily basis? And if we are to use technology and understand that technology has its purpose, how do we remain in control of it? How do we use it to support us in a way that is healthy to our own biological, natural natures and doesn't overtake us and then dictate to us what our future will be? So
It's key here to have our senses. You know, in the last few years, I've been talking about, let's say, fake news and pseudo truth. And, you know, and there's the news has been panicking. How can we know the truth if you can fake it? Well, as you just said, we have a you know, a truth regulator. We can feel it through the body, through the gut instinct. We can feel the shiver. But of course, if you're operating through the mind or through this externalization, when you say, I don't know what truth is because everything's fake, you're already living outside yourself. You've already denied your own truth detector through the human body. And that, I would say, also another aspect of the sovereign self is connectivity. We are connected inherently with source, with our own understanding, with other people in a real way. But disconnect, which is happening a lot now in the world, in the technological world, in the world of dissonance and distraction, we're losing the sense of connection. And that, I think, is you know, fundamental part of the sovereign self is connection.
Yes. And that connection to self, that self-trust. I think for those of us who are exploring the more natural organic path, we know that that is pivotal to us being able to move forward and evolve with the possibilities for humanity. With, you know, we have, from a quantum field perspective, we know there is more to our to what we're experiencing on this planet, within our universe, etc. And so we are opening up to possibilities of energy and connecting with energy with our cosmological cousins as well. So I see that there is so much more that we can explore through our own inner capacities without the use of technology to say, well, let's send up a space probe and find out if there's life beyond these realms, you know. Going back to the trust me, trust me, I'm looking after your best interests. What happens if we can use our own inner guidance system and sensory capacities and evolve those senses to a higher level where we can actually make those connections on our own? What happens to the control system as well? So it's that self-trust in terms of self-guidance and learning to be in the moment, to sense and take that forward without having the controls or a system around us to tell us what's right, wrong, what works and what doesn't.
It is. It's fundamental that we have to, you know, reorganize the way we perceive existence, because, you know, the stories they've been throwing at us, yes, I mean, everything is separate, everything is completely, you know, divided. We go up into space in a rocket, you know, we have to travel through space to visit other planets. I mean, it's like you know, I don't know, these little cartoons where you have these moving these pieces around. Let's understand that, you know, I will admit that my understanding is that we exist in a unified field of pure consciousness, but we are pinpoint manifestations in physicality. So we have let's say we have a sovereign representation within that pinpoint, but the real sovereignty goes back to the whole unified field from which we manifest. And that, you know, we have to simplify it and bring it back to that. We're getting sucked into all these stories about, you know, how the world operates, but those stories actually control us, because we're under the spell of this make-believe world that things happen like this, they happen like that. You can be a part of it like this if you put your left foot forward. But really, we are participating in a unitary existence, and we should take that back. And that understanding gives sovereign power, not in a
Yes.
worldly power, but in a
Yeah.
sovereign power through our capacity to engage from that sense of unitary source.
Yes, it's a self-determination, isn't it? Inner, inside and out. So I think we could probably continue this and expand it further out for quite some time. But I hope that we've given the audience and those who are interested in hearing this information some different points of reflection to consider, because I so want there to be more conversation about who we are and what do we really want versus just accepting what we're given. And if we really want something, then what do we do? So Kingsley, do you have any final thoughts for people who may be watching this now or at some other future time as to what might serve them in terms of reflection points right now, or anything else that you might like them to leave people with that will help them to evolve this conversation for themselves on this process for themselves and for humanity?
Well, ultimately, each person must find their own understanding for themselves. As they say, you can show a person a bicycle, but you can't ride it for them. Every person must learn to ride themselves. So to give some indication, I would say from my own experience only, that we need to keep it simple, that we tend to over complexify things and make it complicated. And then we get entangled in such an external mess. And for myself, I've tried, especially in the last few years, I've tried to bring back some of my, let's say, my energetic entanglements, or call them energetic tentacles. They're out there in the world. And I'm trying to like downsize in a way, like moving to a smaller house, but that house is us. And I feel that we need to, like I said, bring it back home more, try to spend more time in a space where you are comfortable with, where you have that trust. And we have to listen to ourselves, find a way that you can find space to listen to yourself. It doesn't have to be through any teaching or any particular form of meditation. There is no one way, but try to find a silence, try to listen to yourself, and try to keep things simpler. And especially now as we go forward, try to bring back some of those energetic entanglements and let things go. It's time for energetic spring cleaning. You know?
Yes, yes.
And to spring clean your house, you have to clear out some of the furniture and then decide which pieces to bring back in.
Yeah.
But always treat yourself well in that spring cleaning.
Wise words, wise words. Thank you for sharing such great pointers. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you so much for participating. I would love to, for all our audience to get some points of reference of where they can find out more about your work. So if you would like, if there's anything coming up that you'd like to share now, but I'll also put some details of connection points in the show notes. But is there anything that you'd like to share with people right now in terms of what's coming up for you?
Well, thank you, Caroline, for saying that. I mean, I do have a website which has a lot of material on. If people Google my name, Kingsley Dennis, it's kingsleydennis.com. One of the advantages of having not unusual name, I suppose, they can find me. I have on my website, I have a menu with writings I have and videos. I have over 60, 70 essays, all free for people to read, and videos people to watch and to make your own mind up. And I do have an upcoming publication called Life in the Continuum, where I talk about how vibratory evolution and consciousness is all a part of this expression from the unified field, and like similar to what we've been discussing today. But I would just say people have to do their own homework and their own investigations. Go ahead and do that, and you're welcome to drop me a line if you find me.
Well, I can honestly say that Kingsley is the most amazing source of a varied a variety of information, both his videos and his writing. So I'd strongly recommend checking out all those resources that are freely available to you. So thank you, Kingsley. I'm really grateful to you for joining me today. And I look forward to us both and everybody else here today continuing the journey of exploring what we really want for humanity and how we can each pay more attention to living more through the heart. So for those of you who would like to find out about future conversations, please hit the subscribe button and you will find out about future conversations that will be coming out very shortly. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Kingsley, for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. You've been very kind.